Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture on texts, framing and agenda setting. This lecture is part of your paper on communications research. In this module, we will be learning two text-based theories of media effects, agenda setting and framing. We will learn how presentation of text has a strong bearing on the meanings and interpretations that the readers make from it. We will discuss how the effect of the messages is not a result of the variation in the content, but a function of the difference in mode and approach of presentation. The lecture focuses on the role of media in making some issues more salient than others by reporting them more frequently. It also focuses on how presenting certain aspects of issue to the public leads them to think in a specified way. Enough research has been done to establish the power that the news media wields to influence its consumers. The primary importance of its role in setting a nation's agenda and also to draw the public's attention to the specific issues of concern remains undisputable. The way news media presents an issue to the public indicates the prominence of that issue, as told by McCombs and Shaw 1972. For example, if a newspaper publishes a story on top of front page, then that story is automatically considered to be the most important piece of news for that particular day. If a newspaper publishes a small story on some back page of the paper, it indicates that the newspaper does not attach much importance to the issue. If there are two big stories unfolding simultaneously, say for instance, there is a bomb explosion in the busy street of a city, killing many, and on the other hand, some film star is getting married. Out of the two happenings, the one the media chooses to spend more space and time on assumes more weight with respect to the consumers, that is readers and viewers. They also begin to consider that particular issue to be more significant than the other. The theory of agenda setting describes the ability of the news media to influence the salience of topics on the public agenda, as shown by McCombs and Reynolds in 2002. It predicts that any news item that is covered repeatedly and prominently ultimately leads that particular topic or issue to acquire more salience in the minds of the public. The people who are exposed to those repeated messages through the mass media tend to believe that those issues are more significant than others. This theory underscores the immense power and clout that the mass media holds. It is considered to be the primary weapon to shape public opinion on any issue. According to Deering and Rogers in 1988, most of the research conducted on agenda setting has outlined two basic assumptions. The news media are not mirrors of reality. They filter and shape the reality to be believed by the public. The attention given by the media to certain events and issues makes the public also perceive those issues to carry more importance and weight than others. The basic idea of agenda setting was first outlined by Walter Lippmann in his 1922 book Public Opinion, which has sometimes been considered as the founding book of modern journalism. The first chapter in the book, titled The World Outside and the Pictures in Our Heads, argues that the news media are the primary link between events happening in the world and the related images in the minds of the public. Lippmann draws attention to the fact that the news media are the couriers of information to the public who are largely out of reach, out of sight, and out of mind. It is through the reception of this information from the news media that these people get an impression of the larger world of public affairs. Therefore, the power rests with the media as to what information they want to feed to the citizens through the stories they choose to tell. News media provide a worldview that has been molded according to the priorities of the media. This leads the items that are prominent according to the media agenda to become important in the public mind as well, as argued by Lippmann in 1922. In 1963, Bernard Cohen pointed out that the press is significantly more than a purveyor of information and opinion. It may not be successful much of the time in telling people what to think, but it is stunningly successful in telling people what to think about. He argued that different people will have a different picture of the world based on the sketch what is drawn for them by the writers, editors, and publishers of the newspaper they read, as pointed out by Cohen in 1963. The theory was formally conceptualized by Maxwell, McCombs, and Donald Shaw through their Chapel Hill study. During the 1968 United States presidential elections, they executed the research on 100 residents of Chapel Hill in North Carolina. They aimed to test Lippmann's idea of pictures in our head by making a comparison between the issues that ran high on media's agenda and those that were important according to the undecided voters. The results of the study revealed that there was a strong correlation between the two. The issues deemed to be important by the residents of the Chapel Hill were same as those reported as the most significant issues by the local and national media, as pointed out by McComb and Shaw in 1972. McCombs and Shaw used survey method for the study. They asked the voters to tell what they thought to be the most important issue of the day. The responses given by them were recorded and then compared with the contents of the news media for the past month, which the voters were reading, listening and viewing. It was found that the answers of the respondents were very much in sync with the information provided by the news media as depicted through a strong correlation coefficient, that is R greater than 0.9. The study helped McCombs and Shah to be able to understand the degree to which the media determines public opinion, as outlined by Deering and Rogers in 1988 and Rogers in 1993. Though the idea had already been conceived and discussed by the other researchers, yet it was McCombs and Shah who gave the first empirical evidence to establish the power of news media in setting the public agenda. The theory, being supported by strong empirical data, became well acknowledged in the realm of social sciences. James W. Deering and Avnet M. Rogers, in their 1996 book Agenda Setting, laid out the main components of agenda setting through a figure reprinted from Agenda Setting by James Deering and Avnet M. Rogers, 1966, Thousand Oaks, California. It was brought about by Sage Publications in 1996. The three main components of agenda setting process are the media agenda, the public agenda and the policy agenda. According to Deering and Rogers in 1993, the three components differ from each other from the perspective of research conducted. The three types of agendas involve different dependent variables. Deering and Rogers point out that most of the research has focused on public and media agenda setting, while the policymakers' agenda has been largely ignored. They propose that there should be more emphasis on how the media and public agendas might influence elite policymakers' agenda, as pointed out by Walgrave and Van Alst in 2006. This suggests that researchers should explore what are the sources of news for the President or members of the US Congress, that is, those who are the elite policy makers, and also examine how it influences the policies they make. Framing. Another crucial theory of media effects is framing. The concept of framing is an extension of the agenda setting. While agenda setting is concerned with the prioritizing of an issue by reporting it frequently, framing deals with how the media presents an issue within a specific context. This careful placing of the topic in a certain field of meaning has a strong effect on the decision making pattern of the public. News stories in the media appear to be systematized based on narrative conventions that offer an explanation about who is doing what and with what purpose, as pointed out by Ardevolo Abreu in 2015. According to Tuckman in 1978, news is a window whose frame limits the perception of reality by limiting the perceptions of different realities and focusing on a specific piece of it. As a result of these processes, some aspects of the reality perceived through the news will be more prominent than others. Ant-Man in 1993 defined framing as the process of deliberately choosing certain aspects of the reality and then laying more stress on them. It defines the problem, identifies its causes, proposes moral judgments, and also suggests suitable solutions. Frames are a vital element of news reporting in that they highlight certain aspects of reality while diminishing others. By using a specific frame in a news report, the journalist projects an event or an issue through a desired lens. The frame is reflected in the news story, thus build up, reaching the reader whose opinion is influenced based on that report. Framing is considered to be very effective as it is a self-learning shortcut. Fisk and Taylor in 1991 mentioned that human beings are cognitive misers by nature, which means that they tend to do as little thinking as possible. They prefer to have a quick way of processing information easily. This is done by frames which help them understand the received messages. This makes frames a potent tool to influence the interpretation of messages by the receivers. The senders of the messages, who have control over building of these frames, thus become all the more powerful. The roots of the concept of framing lie in interpretive sociology. The sociological perspective holds that people perceive and interpret their reality and transactions of day-to-day life based on their interactions with others and meanings assigned to the situations. The situations are defined through mediated intersubjective processes. Therefore, how people see and understand reality is determined by other people's contributions, as outlined by Ardevol and Abreu in 2015. Initially, it was Gregory Bateson, an anthropologist, who first referred to the concept of framing in his book Steps to an Ecology of Mind in 1972. He defined a frame as a spatial and temporal bounding of a set of interactive messages, as outlined by Bateson in 1972. It was Gitlin in 1980 who explored how the news media tried to demean the students' New Left movement in the decades of 1960. Media frames were examined from a sociological perspective for the first time. Gitlin posited that frames refer to the persistent design of choosing and stressing certain aspects of reality evident through cognition, understanding, and presentation. Frames are generally unspoken and unacknowledged, and they play a key role in organizing the world for both journalists and the readers of their news reports. During its initial development stage in the 1970s, framing was conceived as a part of research on cognitive psychology. However, it was Erving Goffman in 1974 study titled Frame Analysis that applied the concept of framing to the sociology. This idea was further applied to communication studies, which established the concept and theory of framing in communication. Goffman defines a frame as a social framework and as a mental schema that allows users to organize experiences, as outlined by Ardevol and Abreu in 2015. Goffman explained the idea of frame by comparing it to a picture frame. He expounded that framing works in the same way as a person makes use of a structure, that is, a frame, to showcase his picture. The picture is a representation of the content of what is going on in the person's life, while the outer structure represents the frame. Together they organize the social experience of his life, as outlined by Trevino in 2003. Jim Kuyapier, a researcher in the communication studies, used frame analysis to make rhetorical analysis in political communication. He analyzed texts and looked for the themes that were persistent through time. He further scrutinized these themes to find out they were framed. He argued that the work of news media begins with the gatekeepers as they decide which story will be told to the audiences. They further decide how much salience they want to provide to that particular story, which accounts agenda setting. Finally, they decide how they want to present the story, which accounts for the frame they use, as outlined by Kuipers in 2009. How is framing different from agenda setting? The idea of framing is closely similar to agenda setting. Indeed, some scholars, including Maxwell, McCombs, even contend that framing is equivalent to the second level of agenda setting theory and have proposed the integration of both models, as pointed out by McCombs, Lamas, Lopez Escobar and Ray in 1997. In the first level of agenda setting, emphasis is laid on media's role in telling the people what to think about, while in second level, focus is shifted to the media's function of telling them how to think about. The second level of agenda setting, also referred to as framing, takes into account how public opinion is affected by the agenda of attributes, as pointed out by Belmas and Schaeffer in 2010. Weaver in 2007 compresses agenda setting and framing theories on the basis of their similarities and the differences. The similarities are: the focus of both theories lie with how various issues and topics are presented by the media. They do not consider which are given more or less representation. The theories deal with the most important aspects of an issue. Both the theories emphasize on ways of thinking, not considering the objects of thinking. The difference is, while the agenda setting only deals with the salience of an object's attributes, framing takes into account a broader range of cognitive processes. It goes a step further in establishing the problem, making moral judgments, and even suggesting probable solutions. And finally, in the summary, so let us now summarize our lecture. We outlined the two major theories used for analyzing texts. These are agenda setting and framing. Though the theories are closely interrelated, there are some basic differences between the two. Agenda setting deals with how things that are high on media agenda tend to acquire more significance with the public. Framing, going one step further, is concerned with how the issues are presented to the public to organize their social experience. Do attempt the questions in the self-evaluate quadrant. For further reading suggestions, please refer to the third quadrant. Thank you.